boys and girls, we're going to start today with a little song, so repeat after me. Bring me little water, Sylvie. Your turn. Bring me little water, Sylvie. Really try and get it bright like I'm doing. Bring me little water now. Your turn. Bring me little water now. Bring me little water, Sylvie. Bring me little water, Sylvie. Every little once in a while. Your turn. Every little once in a while. Okay, we're going to do that again. We're going to do the whole thing all the way through since it seems like some of you are comfortable with it. I realize that maybe some people aren't really singers. I know Ashley has a really good time and hates singing. So we're going to try that again. I know Laura, for instance, really can't go below B4. So really try and get there with that. And we're going to try that again. Ready? Let's do it all together this time. Ready? Bring me little water, Sylvie. Come on, louder. I want to hear you. Bring me little water now. Bring me little water, Sylvie. Every little once in a while. Okay, give me something. The slideshow. So how was that? Gross, disgusting. Yeah. There was a lot wrong with that. We're going to kind of break it down a little bit. In my presentation about culturally responsive teaching and kind of what that means in context when you're teaching a lesson and being music teachers. Awesome, okay. So thinking students are at a different level than they actually are. I know Ashley, so I know she doesn't love singing, but I also just assumed because she's a flute player that she hates singing and she doesn't have any experience. If Alex Miller was here, I was going to pick on him. Because he did choir all through high school, and as a music teacher, how do I know what kind of experience my students have? Somebody could have been in my choir for 4 years, and hopefully they're a good sight reader at that point, but they might not be as good of a musician as somebody else who maybe doesn't have as much singing experience, and I don't want to make any assumptions about that. In social and cultural foundations of education, we talked a little bit about the dangers of tracking and sorting and kind of how that plays into it. I didn't really make any assumptions about my class in the little sample lesson that I did. But for example, if somebody was in my class that was a special needs student that maybe had some advanced musical skills but had some trouble in math classes, for example, I can't assume that they're going to be a bad music student just because this is their first time in a music classroom. And kind of the opposite of that, I don't want to assume that somebody that's in AP Psychology and AP Calculus is going to excel in my classroom. They might have a really hard time with music. And I need to kind of call everybody in instead of calling everybody out, which I did quite a few times here. And in terms of what is developmentally appropriate, I greeted you as 5th graders. You are college students. You are not on that level. I also will get into a little bit, but I did use gender binary language. I said, hey, boys and girls. I mean, first of all, you're men and women, most of you, but that is also gender binary language. And kind of just so everyone can have the visual of PJ's stages of cognitive development, kind of again talking about what's developmentally appropriate. At this point, we are comfortable with abstract logic and not really using symbolic notation for things, but if I was truly working with 5th graders, I should have put something on the board that had anything to do with what I was singing, because it wouldn't have translated very well. Okay, inclusive language, so good. I didn't use guys too much because I've kind of gotten out of the habit at this point, but not only as a teacher have I noticed that it makes you kind of sound not inclusive on one end of the spectrum, it also just kind of makes everything more informal. If you're really trying to create a presence in your classroom, you want to create one that's inclusive, and that is using good language. Other gender exclusive language also is a no-no. As we said, we touched on boys and girls a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences as an orientation leader, as a student leadership consultant. So again, working with a college student population. But first year orientation, a lot of times that's the first time this student is coming to this campus and really being involved in this environment. something that I really got in touch with and felt the weight of is when I would have a transgender student in my group, and that was the first time they were really becoming comfortable with their identity. And if you call attendance and use their wrong name, they feel like, oh my gosh, this is not me, this is not where I belong, this is not who I want to be throughout my 4 years, and that's huge. And you want to create that kind of environment in your classroom and make sure that you're using the correct name. Kind of in that same vein, we talked about in educating students with special needs with Dr. Nia, she preferred for us to call her Dr. Nia, but I specifically remember one class, a student asked her, hey, so, we're talking a lot about the Black population. What do you, as a Black woman, like to be referred to as? And it kind of caught all of us a little bit off guard, because we were like, okay, I guess we all say African American. And she responded with, what do I want to be called, or what does society call me? And, that's not saying that you have to go up to every Black student and say, hey, what do you prefer to be called? But she was saying that Black is really the only term that population has owned and has created for themselves. I think that's something that's really important when we're having diverse discussions and talking about a diverse group of populations. Mentioning incorporating first graders or fifth graders in this case, and I talked about preferred names. We can do it next time. So my theme is power and justice. It's been very interesting to see how that is a theme that is prevalent throughout history. So we've learned about music history too. That was my writing intensive credit. A lot of power is led by finances. So composers like Haydn and Mozart, who played for very rich families, that's how they got a lot of these compositions made, because they were being paid to write them. So kind of leading that kind of discussion and not just talking about power dynamics in terms of marginalized identities, which of course you can talk about in a choral classroom, and I encourage everyone to talk about, but kind of bringing that historical aspect to it, and also talking about music is important as well. I know we're running out of time, so we'll go next one. Okay, so doing your research. Did I present the music as it was meant to be performed in this case? No! So I did do it orally. I taught it orally. It is an oral tradition, but it was super bright. It was not in style. I didn't start teaching the harmonies yet, and I didn't teach it with the dance that goes along with it, and that's historically important when we're talking about teaching something in the style that's meant to be performed, and that's going to come up in any kind of music that you teach, regardless of whether or not you have a student in your classroom who identifies as being a part of a community of a piece that you're teaching. You still need to do your research and be confident that you can give this piece, perform this piece to a justice and really perform it the way it was supposed to be performed. And we can stop there. I was just, do you want me to wrap it up a little bit?
Maybe about 30 more seconds.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So just kind of like, as we said, picking music the students will like, but not relying on it also. So I am talking to a lot of music teachers now, and they're kind of taking surveys of what their students like, and you have to kind of know your community and know what everybody needs. And it's not always about what they like the most. And we can go to the last slide. And yes, so just, this is kind of a summary, teaching practices that you want to make sure you incorporate, making a point to discuss multiculturalism because it's important, not because it's a discussion requirement, not just on Martin Luther King Day, not just in concerts where you have to do a gospel piece or you have to do a piece from El Salvador. It's really, it has to be a part of your classroom. Vouching for students who are incorrectly classified, and that could be in terms of sorting and tracking, or that could be in terms of their name. If you're in the teacher's lounge and you hear somebody using their wrong name, saying, no, this person goes by Brian, that's what you should call them. And continue to using inclusive language, and in summary, just showing students that there's a place for them in music and making sure that we call them in.